All right, welcome into the post-game show. We're talking about Oregon's 38-7 loss to the Utah Utes on the road in Salt Lake City. For those of you that are new here, I'm Max Torres, publisher and lead editor of Ducks Digest, covering the Oregon Ducks for Sports Illustrated on Fan Nation. Across the way, I got Dylan Rubenking, reporter with Ducks Digest. How we doing, man?
I'm doing good. It was not a game that a lot of Oregon fans expected. Certainly not the game that I expected. But yeah, I mean, it felt a lot like the Arizona State game in 2019. Just kind of the momentum coming into it, and then just kind of a big letdown on the road. So yeah, I'm sure we'll get into that more.
Yeah, without a doubt we will. Tons of stuff to get into in this one. This is just instant reactions kind of a deal. I mean, I'm sure we're both going to watch this game again, as painful as that's going to be. Look at the stats and the breakdowns and everything. But just wanted to get in here and kind of get some instant thoughts up here. If you guys are in the live stream, definitely feel free to throw us a comment or a question into the chat box, and we'll do our best to address it here and kind of guide the conversation. And then if you're watching this on replay, drop us a comment down below and let us know what you think about this loss and kind of what your mindset is, your mood going forward. Let's see. We got one from Frosty Mug, a little comment here. That loss is on me. I didn't think Utah had a chance. My bad all. Thanks for taking ownership there, Frosty. But yeah, I mean, you think about this game, Dylan, the Ducks entered as 3-point underdogs, and a lot of people were shocked that was the case, right? With how Oregon had been playing, how Utah had been playing. I mean, and it's tough because, they had a lot of momentum going into it, but I feel like I was still confident in this team, even though it was, against a really hot Utah team on the road in Salt Lake. A lot of the toughest games this season have come on the road, and for the most part, the Ducks have showed up, except for that Stanford game. So, they just got dominated thoroughly from the start to finish. They just got out physical. There were a lot of mental errors. There were penalties, just lack of execution. I mean, there's some positives to draw from this game, but I mean, we wouldn't really be doing our job if we didn't, highlight where they came up short.
Out physical. That's a word I've never heard before, but that's a good way to put it. I mean, yeah, Utah just dominated, especially on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Cameron Rising in the first half, got pressured a little bit, but the Ducks couldn't get home. They were creating some big holes for Tavion Thomas and Pledger and Mekhi Bernard, and Rising had a couple of scampers too. So Oregon was getting good pressure, just couldn't get home. That was kind of the big theme in that first half, which obviously if they made a couple of those stops, obviously the damage would have been a little less, I guess, in the first half. They gave up 28 points in the first half and didn't score. And then, yeah, Anthony Brown just was under a bit more pressure, under a bit more duress, was on his backside a bit more than we've usually seen. Took some huge shots late in that second quarter. I wasn't really sure if he was going to get up after a couple of those. So, yeah, I mean, they just got dominated on both sides. And it was really kind of a rare sight because, in a lot of games, Oregon's defensive line has started to look dominant at times. And it never looked that way against the run and pass protection. Never did. Offensive line, I don't really think looked very good either. I'd probably say it was their worst performance of the game. Now, Anthony Brown didn't get sacked an abnormal amount of times. It was just the run game only averaged 2.7 yards a carry, I believe. They just weren't really putting a lot of trust in the run game either. I know I'm rattling off a lot of things here, but there's a lot to take from this one. But yeah, the trenches was just, I think, the biggest surprise for me in this one. The fact that Utah dominated the trenches and it wasn't close.
Yeah, we got our first question here. Definitely want to hop on and address that. Plenty to talk about here. Question coming from Chunky Monkey. Thank you for your question. Love the username as well. We can start next year's quarterback here on out, right? Or do we continue with Brown? Man, it was just tough watching this game because I feel like, the instant reaction or, something that a lot of Duck fans are going to do is put this loss on Anthony Brown. And I'll be the first to say it wasn't one of his best games, but just with how efficiently Utah was moving the ball on offense, how quickly they were putting up points, you can't put this one on Anthony Brown. He didn't have his best game, but he was dealing with a lot. As far as, we talked about the offensive line, not trying to put blame on them, but it was a team loss. They just didn't play well overall. But with regard to this question, I don't know if you can start next year's quarterback if you're looking at a Ty Thompson or a Jay Butterfield or even a Robbie Ashford. I don't know that you can do that now because the Pac-12 North still isn't locked up. We're watching Arizona State and Oregon State play now in the Pac-12 After Dark game. I guess it was kind of already Pac-12 After Dark in Salt Lake, but that game's still going, and the Ducks need Oregon State to drop that game to seal up the Pac-12 North. And I think the last I checked, Arizona State wasn't really doing very well. I think it was like 21-0, 17-0. So I don't think you can start another quarterback now because it would just be too big of a change this late in the season. Where, like Mario Cristobal said in the postgame, there's still a lot to play for. You can still play for a conference championship, and you can still ultimately play for a Rose Bowl appearance.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I was just going to say, with Cristobal saying that they still have a lot to play for. I know it doesn't really feel like it because with this program, it's kind of national championship or bust, especially in the last couple of years with how much talent they've been bringing in. But I mean, yeah, they would just kind of be giving up on their faith toward Anthony Brown. They still have a lot of football left, is probably what Mario Cristobal would say. You have the rivalry game against Oregon State. You have a potential Pac-12 championship game, which it doesn't look like the North is going to be locked up tonight. Oregon State's up 17-0, third quarter getting underway. So essentially that game next week at home in Eugene it basically might decide the North. I'm not sure. Oh, it's the Apple Cup for Wazoo next week. So I think if UW was to get that win, which I believe that's in Seattle. So if UW gets that win and Oregon takes care of business, they're back in the Pac-12 championship game for the third straight year. And then you have to face Utah again, but this time on a neutral site. Utah is going to travel well because they're a lot closer than Oregon is. So yeah, and then a possible Rose Bowl or whatever bowl may come if the Ducks trip again. So yeah, I don't think you're going to see anybody starting a game for the rest of the year but Anthony Brown.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking even before they got to this point in the season. I think as long as the conference championship is still within reach, there's no reason to switch course now. Got another question, Michelle. Thank you for your question. Can they win again with the injuries that they have? I mean, that's a really good question. I mean, I don't want to say that I'm gonna pick against them just because of the injuries that they're dealing with, because they still do have a lot of talent on that roster. But I was getting ready to watch this game, and then we saw the long list of people that were out in this one. You talk about Johnny Johnson being out, Jalen Redd being out. I mean, that was actually what we were talking about starting the show with, Dylan. So I think we should hop in there. For those that didn't see the update, Johnny Johnson, wide receiver, Jalen Redd, wide receiver, those guys are both out for the year. That's the big update coming from Mario Cristobal from a personnel standpoint after this game. Johnny Johnson got hurt in that Washington State game, was able to get off the field on his own power, and then he went to get carted off into the locker room after that. So that's not as much of a shock that, especially with how much frustration we were seeing from him on the sideline, you could kind of tell it was probably a more significant injury. But Jalen Redd, I was super shocked. I mean, we didn't know that there was any issue with him as far as, an injury standpoint. I thought he was fine. So maybe that could be a quick way we could kind of talk about this, because I feel like we're seeing some other comments here. Greg saying that losing the wide receivers was huge in this one in the comments. Maybe we can just talk about that, because I think that really it altered the course of this game a bit. I mean, we didn't have that good of a passing performance, so I don't know if it was a major game changer, so to speak. But I have had a tweet out at the end of this one saying just after this performance this week, the wide receiver room is gonna look a whole lot different come next week. So maybe we could go there, Dylan. Just kind of your thoughts on the wide receivers here and kind of what these injuries could do.
Yeah, I mean, overall, Oregon's been gashed by injuries throughout the year from, start to finish, really. It looks like they're going to be completely gashed. And at that wide receiver room, it, like you said, it kind of came out of nowhere with Jalen Redd. Hadn't really been super involved the last couple of weeks, hadn't really gotten a lot of touches. So I do remember seeing some speculation on if there was something going on, but it's really a surprise that he didn't travel. Johnny Johnson, I can't say I was surprised because of, like you said, he got carted off and, it kind of seemed like he would miss some time. But yeah, it's super unfortunate that they're out for the year. Two very veteran receivers, two class acts off the field as well. So it's very, very tough for them to in their career with a loss like this, and not being able to play for the rest of the year. But to answer the question, I mean, they've pulled it off quite a bit this year with so much, so many injuries. You look at the linebacker depth. I mean, you have Jeffrey Bossa. Now, credit to him, he's playing really well at linebacker, but he was never supposed to be in that rotation at all. He was a safety coming in, and they've had Keith Brown and guys like Nate Hukalani step up as well at linebacker because of just so many injuries. Offensive line, they've had to ship guys around too. Obviously, CJ Verdell out for the year. In the secondary too, with Verone McKinley possibly missing some time. I'm not sure. He was out for the rest of this game, but it didn't sound like there was much of an update. So hopefully he'll be okay. But yeah, I mean, it's just been kind of the story of the season, and the fact that they had only lost one game getting into this one is a credit to the coaching staff. But yeah, I mean, it's been really tough for Oregon all year with the injuries.
Anytime you're talking about a program like Oregon, the talent that they have, the resources at their disposal, there's going to be, the national championship is going to be the expectation, especially just the fact that they haven't won one before. It's going to make the fan base, the donors, and everybody around the program just that much more hungry for one. So I don't want to say that this loss is on injuries, because it's not. I don't think even if they didn't lose, some of the guys that they had, that this would have, turned out differently, because they just weren't mentally ready in this one. Utah just wanted it more, and they weren't locked in. And I feel like that's probably what they would tell you if, we were to talk to them about it and asking them. But to your point, Dylan, just with all the injuries that they've seen, I don't want to say that it's just because of that, but I do think it's pretty remarkable if you were to just get a whiteboard and just look at list out all the players that were hurt. It's pretty crazy that they've gotten to this point where they are in the season to be in this position. And yeah, it's just, man, I can't believe that it's literally like they've had someone notable out or injured to some extent every single week, which is just tough. It's tough to be dealing with that. But I think one of the biggest takeaways from this one, I saw someone else. I don't know. Did you have anything else you wanted to say there? I should ask before I move on to a different point.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a credit to the guys being able to step up and kind of take over for so many guys that are injured. Talk about Byron Cardwell stepping in, Chris Hudson tonight, leading the team with 96 yards receiving. Guys on the offensive line stepping up, especially at linebacker with Bossa, and guys in the secondary. Saw a bit of Damon David tonight. So, it's a credit to the coaching staff for being able to develop guys, with that next man up mentality. And, I'm not going to say that they can't win games again because of the injuries. But I definitely think that even if Oregon was at full strength, the momentum that Utah's been playing with and coming into this game, I don't know if Oregon would have won this at full strength even.
Yeah, we got a comment here saying, "Don't be apologists for Cristobal and the Ducks speak frankly." And no, I mean, that's what we're looking at right now. That's kind of what the point I was trying to make. Even with these injuries that we're seeing, I don't think it would have made the difference, because these guys weren't prepared. They weren't prepared for this game. And, obviously that goes back to the coaching staff. And Cristobal was saying after the game, this one's on me. But I do think, we have another comment here that could help guide this. They're recruiting 4 and 5 stars recruits who consistently regress under the staff. I wouldn't say that's the case for everybody. I think that we're seeing more guys get developed by the Oregon staff, and we're seeing those results in the NFL draft and just having more guys present in the NFL. But I do think they're underachieving for the level that they're recruiting at, for sure. I mean, they are recruiting at a really high level, and they're adding, a lot more talent year in and year out. But I think a really good measuring stick for the recruiting efforts, and this might be too much to ask, but how many guys are playing as true freshmen? Those are the ones that you can really tell. Those are the gems. Those are the ones that are can't miss guys. They're going to be likely going to the NFL, maybe taking some veterans jobs, and see how that kind of pans out. But I don't know. How do you feel about this, Dylan? Just with regard to kind of how they've been recruiting and how those results are, showing themselves on the field.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the standard at Oregon shouldn't just be Pac-12 championships and Rose Bowls. Like, obviously, when you win the Pac-12 title, that carries, a certain level of pride, and winning Rose Bowl certainly does too. I mean, they don't call it the granddaddy of them all for nothing. It is still an important game, and it's still, something that at this point is kind of the ceiling for this team. But yeah, I mean, they've definitely underachieved in recent years, even given all the talent that they've had with Mario Cristobal. And credit, obviously, they're bringing in a ton of talent where in years past that wasn't the case. You think about with Chip Kelly coming in, they weren't really recruiting at the level they were now, but they were still, getting into the BCS and national championship games a couple times. But now it just seems like it's a little too difficult for Oregon to just kind of get through the regular season unscathed. Utah, I think even if they were to lose this one in a close game, I'd consider it a good loss, especially if it came earlier in the year. Like if you replace the Oregon loss with the Stanford loss earlier in the year, I feel like Oregon would not have dropped that far in a lot of people's minds if Oregon lost to a good Utah team, say week 4, week 5. But that Stanford loss, you just can't have that with this level of talent and the level of coaching that is expected. So I agree that they've underachieved. I don't know about the talent necessarily regressing, but I do think they need to do a better job at kind of selling the product on the football field to the people that they're recruiting.
Yeah, I like what you were saying about swapping the Utah and Stanford losses. Just when you look at how Stanford has played since beating the Ducks, they're at the bottom of the Pac-12 North now, and you think about Oregon with the whole number 3 ranking, and they shouldn't be losing to a team like that, and they really shouldn't be losing to any team in the Pac-12 with the talent gap that they've had. But I think this loss is just, I think back to the Stanford game, it's just those flaws are being exposed. Those shortcomings are being exposed. Not being able to consistently push the ball down the field is obviously a big issue for this team, which is weird to say because if we want to just bring it back to this Utah game, AB was kind of letting it fly a little bit. I mean, there were some pretty errant throws without a doubt. But like we saw him take a shot to Devin Williams. He was connecting with Chris Hudson a lot. I know he was one of the guys that we had on our notes, Dylan, that we kind of wanted to talk about here. Even though so many injuries coming up here at the wide receiver spot, I think Chris Hudson was really a bright spot for this team, and he's a young guy that's going to be around for a bit. So I think he's he's one of the positive takeaways from this one.
Yeah, one of the very, very few. Chris Hudson was one of those guys that you kind of saw flashes, but there was the taunting penalty, which I think was against Arizona, where that kind of went viral. He had that nice catch and the run and the spin, and then kind of taunted a dude. He had a couple fumbles earlier in the season, so you kind of saw those flashes of his athleticism and his playmaking ability, just trying to stay poised and help the team in that manner. But yeah, he really shined tonight. His 96 yards were the most that any Oregon receiver has had this season, which blows my mind, to be honest with you. But yeah, he showed out. I don't remember seeing him. I think he had one catch that was a little high, but he probably still could have brought it in. But yeah, just going back to Anthony Brown. I mean, I liked his aggression. I think you tweeted saying like, I like his, kind of the gunslinger mentality a little bit that he's bringing in, which we have not seen from him kind of throughout his career. So it was cool to see that. I know that was probably part of the game plan because Utah had a lot of injuries in the secondary, especially last week with Fabian Marks going down. So I'm not necessarily thrilled with some of the throws he made. He completed less than 50% of his passes, a lot of easy throws that he overthrew. Some of those deep ones, I think Utah, you have to give them some credit. They played well in the secondary, given all of the injuries that they've had. They held Brown to, I think it was 231 passing yards and less than 50% completion. So they did make some plays back there and in the middle. The short game, I mentioned this in your guys' pregame with you and Allie, that I wasn't sure that you're going to see a lot of the short passing game stuff because of how good Utah's linebackers are in coverage. And we kind of saw that a little bit. But at times, there were still times where AB would check down when it's like 3rd and long. And, it's kind of been a theme of the whole season, just checking down when there's other options down the field.
Yeah, we saw a lot of those check downs. And then to your point about the intermediate pass, I feel like it wasn't even necessarily because they weren't there at times, but those were some fairly routine throws that we saw AB missing, throwing too high a couple times, throwing behind a guy. Devin Williams was, motioning for him to get the ball up because he was throwing it low. So it's just, it wasn't there. It wasn't there. We don't want this to be, just a bash session. But I feel like we've kind of talked a lot about, about what we've seen from Anthony Brown at quarterback. But to talk about one of the earlier comments that I think was in here, let me see if I can scroll back a little bit. Oh yeah, from Quack Attack 49er, asking about the game plan tonight. We came out slinging the ball, the absolute worst part of our offense. Dye and Cardwell had limited carries. I didn't understand the plan. That was one of the questions that I was asking myself as well. I think Dye only had like 4 carries. Was it at
6.
halftime?
Oh,
6.
it's halftime, yeah. At halftime, yeah.
Yeah, at halftime, I think I tweeted that, and I was like, "This is the best player on Oregon's offense, and he's touched the ball 4 times." That just kind of shocked me. So the fact that he was limited, obviously he didn't have a ton of yards to show for it, but I just feel like you got to at least feed the hot hand. Some final stats here: 6 carries for 29 yards with a long of 12, averaging 4.8 yards a carry. Cardwell, 7 carries for 35 yards, averaging 5 yards a carry, along with 13. And then AB kept the ball 9 times for 8 yards. So he got sacked a couple times, so that obviously messed up his stats there. But yeah, it seemed like, going into this game, obviously, if you're Oregon, you got to pound the rock, right? That's where your bread and butter is. That's your identity. You have the best offensive line in the conference. I feel pretty confident in saying that, even though they didn't play like it tonight. But it seemed like that was what they did. They wanted to do going into this game. I think Utah was fairly middle of the road defending the run. I think it was like 136 yards per game. So it seemed like they tried to do that. And then when it didn't work, they tried to get, a little cute. We saw that reverse with Hudson. That didn't go anywhere. And then kind of relying on the pass game. So, and I can understand, if you keep getting stuffed, obviously you're going to switch things up a little bit. But one of the biggest takeaways here is that it was a prime example of this offense being pretty one-dimensional, at least in this game. It's funny because they ran the ball so well the whole season, right? And then you get to a loss like this. No one has any problems necessarily when you're winning. A lot of people wanted them to pass the ball more, right? Pass it more effectively, but you can get away with just pounding the ball down people's throats until it doesn't work. And then when you're asked to pass, and obviously we see the results there.
Well, yeah, and it's like, it's not like the run game wasn't working early on. They just weren't doing it the first couple of drives. Like, I think Travis Dye had only 1 carry on each of their first 2 drives, which resulted in, I think it was a punt and a turnover on downs. And so, it wasn't like they were trying to run the ball and nothing was working. They started out and just trying to throw the ball down the field, which I kind of get because they did have a freshman back there kind of playing corner and safety because of the injuries. So I kind of get attacking a guy who doesn't have a lot of experience, but at the same time, like the comment kind of alluded to, you're going away from what's been working. Oregon's ran for 300 yards, I believe, in each of the last 2 games. So, Utah's defense, they have some stars. They have guys that can make stops in the run game, but it's still effective when you kind of want to establish that. You're kind of setting the tone early in the game. And I think we kind of saw that with UCLA, right? UCLA got off to that super hot start, scored touchdowns on the first 2 drives, and then Oregon kind of got the run game going to get themselves back into the game. And then, when Oregon got down 14-0 in this one, they just kept trying to throw the ball down the field, which it kind of looked like it was starting to work. Brown connected with Devin Williams down the field, a couple of sideline throws, Chris Hudson down the field. So, a couple spotty, areas of success in the passing game, but yeah, they just completely shied away from running the ball down the throat of the Utah defense, which going into this one, I thought it was going to be the strength of, it was going to be how Oregon would win this game.
And I think another thing we got to talk about, we've been talking a lot about the offense, but man, the defense got gashed in this one. I think the biggest stat of the night that I'm sure fans were screaming about on their TVs was the third down defense. My God, you got to get off the field when you can. 11 for 14, Utah's third down conversion rate. And then you flip the other side, 6 for 14 for Oregon. But to just talk about the defense, you got to obviously try to get them in better third down situations where they have to get more yards, obviously. But they were just running the ball and they had that momentum. And then the middle of the field was wide open all night. I feel like, Britton Covey was getting his, and then Keithy, I think it was his name, the tight end. He was doing really well. The defense was not what we expected to see tonight. And I think that we talked about the third down defense and just that credit to that Utah offensive line because they came to play and they were, a huge part of that offense just getting clicking. And Tavion Thomas was just a beast. I mean, he didn't play last game against Arizona, but he didn't miss a beat. He didn't miss a step. Picked up right where he left off against Stanford, ripped off a bunch of huge runs and was a huge, centerpiece of that Utes offense.
Yeah, the Utah offensive line played really well, except for Nick Ford was trying to chuck the ball to the moon on a couple of his snaps, but Rising actually handled those very, very well. So credit to him for that. But yeah, I mean, going into this game, I kind of knew with how hot Utah's offense had been that they were going to get theirs. I thought they were going to put up some points, going to put up some yards. And that's kind of how it's been for Oregon this year. They've kind of given up some yards, but gotten key stops, to get the offense the ball back. And then, third downs have just kind of been a struggle for Oregon's defense this year, especially third and longs. I don't know why, that's been such a problem. There have been so many games like the Cal game. It seemed like there were a lot of 3rd and 10s, 3rd and 12s. Like they'd get, teams behind the chains. Stanford game, even if we want to go back to that. It seemed like there were 3rd and longs, and then they would get right down the field. In the middle of the field would be wide open. I mean, it's been a problem. A lot of people have been saying that a lot of Oregon's little problems that have been coming up throughout the season kind of, banded together and became a nightmare. I don't know if I can put it any better than that. And I'm surprised that the defense was so bad on third down. At one point, I think they were 10 of 12 and converted 6 in a row, 5 or 6 in a row. So yeah, it was really, they just got tired. They got gashed, and it was a really tough performance. And Tavion Thomas, I mean, I've been watching him all season long. That guy is an animal. That guy's an absolute animal. And I think he has 11 touchdowns in his last 3 games, and he missed last week. Yeah, dude is arguably the best running back in the Pac-12. Credit to Rashad White and BJ Baylor too, Travis Dye. But with the production that Thomas has had, he's definitely up there.
Yeah, no, that's a good point that you mentioned just about the defense looking tired. I feel like that. I mean, we saw them a couple of various shots, just between plays, and they looked like they were tired from what we saw, and there was hardly any pressure on Rising, and when there was, he navigated it really well. He was poised in the pocket. Only got 1 sack this whole game, which was obviously tough. I can't remember where I was going with that. I just feel like because there was a lack of a pass rush, it was probably a relief to a degree just with the way they were running the ball. 208 total yards, 4.2 yards a carry isn't too incredible, but obviously that was what was rolling for them. So I'm thinking, well, if I can get them to pass, hopefully I can capitalize there. But it felt like every time Rising needed to pass, his first read was there, or someone was, easily open, right? So they were just getting what they wanted there. I mean, Cameron Rising only completed 10 passes for 178 yards. So that doesn't sound like that great of a performance because it wasn't. But I think also just the diversity that we saw in the backfield, Tavion Thomas, TJ Pledger, Mekhi Bernard, I mean, they were all kind of getting theirs in various ways here. Obviously Tavion Thomas is going to be the main talking point with 21 carries for 94 yards and 3 touchdowns. But they were getting it from whoever they needed it from, which I think it kind of just was that kind of a night. It didn't really matter who they threw out there in any position. They were just getting whatever they wanted.
That's kind of how it's been for Utah throughout this season. Now, obviously, they haven't played a team like Oregon this year, but it seems like throughout the Pac-12 slate for Utah that they've kind of just been running over everybody with whoever. They have three really, really talented running backs who can do a lot of different things. Tavion Thomas is a very physical runner. TJ Pleasure is very, very speedy, smaller guy. And then Mekhi Bernard is kind of a mix of the two. He's physical, but small and speedy, and he can catch out of the backfield. And, you saw that with, I think Bernard ripped off, I think he had a 20-yard catch at one point. But I don't remember seeing the middle of the field being so open, especially for Brant Keithy. He went over 100 yards by the end of the third quarter. I think he had a 49-yard catch where he was kind of just running through dudes. Everywhere you look, I don't think there's a lot of bright spots defensively. They never really got off the field at a timely manner to give the ball back to the offense with a chance to, cut into the lead. There were times early in the game, though, when they were getting some stops and Oregon was getting pretty good field position off of a couple good kick returns. I think they had the ball inside the 35 to 39 a couple times early on and just couldn't, they would get into Utah territory, but just couldn't get down the field, had some sloppy penalties, holdings, delay of games. So yeah, overall, like you said, they were just mentally there on both sides. And then by the time that they got into a position where they really needed to kick into high gear and try to make a comeback, it just never came to fruition.
Yeah, I think about some of those third down plays and just kind of some of the mental errors and the lapses that we saw. You look at that field goal. There was a messed up blocking assignment on the exterior when they should have given a little bit more blocking there on the inside. And then I think it says a lot about the way a game's going when you need to use timeouts to avoid delay of game calls because you're just not organized. You're not operating at the level that you want to with the efficiency. So I think that was pretty telling of how things were going. And in a game like this, you can't afford to, those timeouts are crucial. And we saw that firsthand by the way that the second half ended. The first half ended. I had a comment here I wanted to throw up here. Tibonacci, I think he was in the pregame show. So thanks for coming back. Hopefully I'm saying it right this time. First time I've ever seen an OC throw a pick six with 20 seconds left trying to throw the ball in a 2-minute drill for the first time all year when easy down it and then go on to the second half. So talking about kind of the play calling that we saw at the end of that first half. I have the game script up here in front of me. Oregon gets the ball to start the drive with 27 seconds left in the first half. Brown throws an incomplete pass to Ferguson, and then Oregon calls a timeout. And then there's another incomplete pass that was broken up by the Utah defense. Then you get it to third down, and Travis Dye runs the ball for 7 yards to get it to the Oregon 32. And then at that point, there's only 11 seconds left. And what does Utah do? They call a timeout. And then that more or less forces Oregon's hand, I feel like, because they ended up punting. You obviously don't want to go for it and then give Utah the ball back in deep in your own territory, obviously. And then Thompson, he punts it. And what does Britton Covey do? He houses it 78 yards for the touchdown. So, that made it 28-0. And I feel like, you talk about the middle eight, Dylan, and kind of how that, plays into a game. And if the Ducks just move the ball a little bit more, or, like we're saying here, maybe just down it to go into the half, maybe the momentum's a little bit different. So, I don't know. What were your thoughts on kind of how that sequence all played out, ending the first half from what we saw?
Man, when it got to that second, the end of the second quarter and Mario Cristobal was approaching Molly McGrath for that halftime, I was a little scared for Molly just because it was fresh off that kick and that punt return for the touchdown, where Oregon didn't have the timeouts. And then Utah kind of out of greed, I think was what Todd Blackledge, the color commentator, said, that, Kyle Winningham was kind of taking that timeout out of greed when they really didn't need to. And then they housed the punt for the touchdown. So I got a little scared because I thought Cristobal was going to be a little fiery. And he kind of was. But yeah, we've seen it a couple times now where Oregon has the ball at the end of the first half with a chance to kind of cut into a deficit. We saw it against Stanford. And then they get the ball back to start the second half with another chance to put some more points on the board. And then, yeah, that last possession in the first half was not ideal, to say the least. And then I think it was 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, and they just kind of handed it off to him. And it was just kind of well, let's try to get the run game going now, I guess. It was really kind of a really weird decision. I haven't really seen a lot of those throughout the season. And then, yeah, the second half didn't start out great either because you're talking about, a 21-0 or 21-7 if they get on the board on that last drive to get the ball back to make it 14-21. And then now you're, coming out of the locker room down 28-0. So, yeah, definitely a game-changing play. Probably the biggest frustrating play for Oregon tonight, I would say.
Yeah, and I mean, I think in the moment you see that that happen, you see that timeout coming in, and you're like, oh wow, really? Like, why would you do that? You're already commanding so much. But I think that's kind of, if I'm putting myself in the opposition's shoes, and what I'm seeing from Oregon, they looked vulnerable pretty much all year, right? So if you have that, I see a window of opportunity, you got to take it, you got to seize it, and I think that's what Whittingham did. And I think that goes hand in hand with what I think we've seen from some of these other teams this year. Is I feel like people were pretty confident when it comes to going for it on fourth down. Oregon hasn't been the best at getting off the field on third down. So what's going to change on fourth down? I mean, I feel like I'm going to like my odds there, right? So I think that that's like a really isolated, scenario, but I feel like that kind of just goes to that good, not great, divider for this team, and for the defense in particular. You get some really nice flashes every now and then. Sometimes there's a good pass rush. Sometimes it disappears like it did tonight. And I just think that's kind of played into how people have approached playing this defense and, trying to expose the shortcomings and also, take advantage of, those small windows of opportunity when they see them and then potentially blow things wide open.
I know you've been hyping up Coach Whittingham as, very underrated coach within the Pac-12 and nationally, and I totally agree with that. But I got to say, he took this to another level. He coached the hell out of this game for Utah. Like you said, he exposed Oregon's weaknesses, and he didn't just expose them. Like he kind of, put them under the spotlight, and he kept attacking, especially with, the end of the second quarter. And the other thing that was really surprising to me was kind of the flip with special teams, because Utah, I tweeted it out earlier, they're, not having a good year on special teams. They've had 3 blocked punts. They give up a lot of return yards, and they completely dominated in special teams. They had the Britton Covey punt return. They blocked the field goal from Camden Lewis, and he missed another one that they got some pressure on from the right side. So, yeah, all 3 phases, Utah absolutely dominated, not just on the field, but coaching and decision-making and just the overall game plan and scheme. It was a masterful performance from Utah.
All right, here's a point that isn't directly related to this game, but I think it's super relevant to what we were just talking about with the pass rush. This comment coming from Trello. Thanks for the comment. This pass rush actually might go downhill next year. I wouldn't be shocked. I was having this conversation with one of my roommates earlier today. Who's a reliable pass rusher on this team not named Kayvon Thibodeau? I'd say Brandon Dorlus is, a guy who's absolutely, proven that he can step up when the team needs him to, but I don't think you're going to get a good pass rush if you only have 2 guys that can consistently do it. There've been people that, and that's not a slight to Dorlus, obviously. Like I'm saying that he's one of their better options right now, but you as a defense, you got to have more guys that can get pressure on a more consistent basis. And then Noah Sewell is obviously a guy who's going to be back next year. So I don't know. Do they get creative with him and have him put his hand in the dirt or have him come off the edge? I mean, I don't know. You really have to think about what they have on the roster right now and how that kind of projects. I think Dorlus is draft eligible, and he's had his best year without a doubt since coming to Oregon. Came in 19, so 19, 20, 21. I believe he'd be eligible for the draft. You look at some other guys. I have an interview with Cyrus Moss, who just dropped his top 3 yesterday. I talked to him today to break down kind of where Oregon stands, where Bama and Arizona State stand. So he's a guy that the Ducks are looking at as maybe someone who could come in as that next pass rusher. You also look at a guy like David Bailey at Mater Dei. He's going to be, it sounds like he's going to be on campus next weekend for the Oregon State game. Oregon making a late push there. But, I mean, the talent's certainly there. But if you're looking at a pass rushing need, we haven't seen a lot of guys that necessarily fit into that pass rusher kind of skill set.
Yeah, and I do think that that was kind of a concern of a lot of people coming into the season was outside of Thibodeau, can this Oregon pass rush be consistent? Can they have guys that can make a lot of noise? And I think at times you've seen that it has that capability of being dominant. There was times at the Stanford game, the Cal game, the UCLA game, um, even the Washington game at times, Washington State. Like there are moments, just kind of spectacles of dominance from the defensive line. And then there are other times where it doesn't seem like there's much of anything going on, especially if they eradicate, if they were able to take care of Kayvon Thibodeau and double team him, or like Utah's been doing, running away from him and designing stuff so he's not, able to make a play. Who else is there that can really create pressure? And I think a lot of that concern early in the year was in the middle. Who can create pressure in the middle? Because Jordan Scott was, graduated. Austin Folio was graduated. Have some kind of guys who have gotten time, but not a lot of starting experience, like Popo and Christian Williams and Keanu Williams if he got playing time. And Dorless can move inside and out. He's done really well no matter where you put him, like you said. But yeah, I think once Kayvon leaves, who's there that can really, make noise, make, teams scheme specifically for you. I think if Dorless comes back, that's going to be a huge plus. But coming in next year, freshman, you have 4-star Grayson Halton, who I believe plays defensive tackle more so than end. You have Ben Roberts, the Washington decommit from Utah, who plays kind of both ways. And then you have Lamar Winston's brother, coming off the edge and playing linebacker a little too. Cyrus Moss would be huge because, they've talked to him like he's, kind of the next Kayvon Thibodeau because he can drop back and play coverage outside linebacker and he can put in his hand in the dirt and play defensive end too. So I think he would be a huge get at this point if Kayvon dips out. But yeah, I do expect the pass rush to definitely go downhill if Kayvon leaves, which, is almost certainly a guarantee at this point, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, also you got Sir Mel's in that defensive line hall, so gotta make sure that we don't forget about him. I don't want to make this entirely recruiting focused, but that's the cool thing about college football, right? You can talk about the product on the field, and then how are you going to change that? You look at the recruiting trail, transfer portal, it all comes back together. You look at a guy like Anthony Lucas, he's someone that the Ducks are still going for. I think they're kind of on the outside looking in right now. He's a 5-star caliber guy out of Chaparral in Arizona. Talked to him, had an update on the site a little bit ago after he went to check out Notre Dame on another visit. So they might be able to get him back on campus before he decides where he wants to go. But yeah, so just some recruiting talk there. I think there's a lot that they still have to do as far as identifying that pass rusher for next year. And that's what's so hard is you can't look too far ahead. Well, you got to do it. You got to look ahead into next year, but also work on the here and now. So let's kind of bring it back to this Utah game. Let's see any areas that you kind of wanted to hit on, Dylan. I know that I'm looking at our notes right now to see kind of what else we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, offensively, I do like what I saw from Devin Williams and Chris Hudson as kind of reliable downfield threats. I do like that they were trying to get Dante Thornton involved early. I do think, obviously when you kind of take a hit at the depth chart with Johnny Johnson and Jalen Red, you kind of have to go next man up. But a lot of people have been calling for Dante Thornton and Troy Franklin because of just the level of talent that those guys possess. I mean, those guys are freaks of nature, and they're really good at yards after the catch and making the catch. Troy Franklin, you've seen it. Dante Thornton had a great yards after catch with a touchdown against Stony Brook. And it just, you haven't seen Dante Thornton really since early on in the Pac-12 season. So I'm excited to see him get the opportunity. I wish it didn't come from huge injuries like with Johnny Johnson and Jalen Red. And then I know something that you've really been keying on throughout this season and with the passing game is the lack of production from tight ends in the passing game. Did you want to speak more to that?
Yeah, sure. We can talk about that. I mean, you talked a little bit about it with how well Utah's linebackers have been playing, and how that might have kind of played into that, right? I think we saw Spencer Webb getting some catches, but they really haven't been super involved. And I don't know what the root cause of that would be. I'm trying to get better at, diving into scheme and kind of what we see out there on the field that might be preventing that. But I think part of it might be because they didn't run the ball very well. I mean, I don't know if they run the ball a little bit better, then maybe that opens up some more opportunities for the tight ends in maybe like a play action game. So I think that those are some guys that are, hopefully going to be used more moving forward. We heard from Cristobal that they're hoping to have DJ Johnson back in a week or so. That guy hasn't played in 2 straight games, but we don't exactly know any specifics as far as, his status or what the reasoning was behind that. So I think that that'll be something that we have to monitor going forward, just because they're just so banged up at a variety of positions here.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lack of talent at the tight end position at all. It's just I think with the schemes, you don't really see a lot of the tight ends running kind of deep routes like you kind of saw with Jacob Breland back then, like you saw with Hunter Campmoyer a little bit, Evan Bayless. Like I don't think the offensive system is set up for the tight ends to kind of thrive in the passing game as much. It seems like they're more set up to be kind of more blocking tight ends. Now, obviously, Terrence Ferguson had some catches early in the year. I think he has the most yards and receptions of any tight end. So coming into this one, it looks like Ferguson had 13 catches for 109 and 2 touchdowns. Spencer Webb has a touchdown too. Manival has a touchdown too. But yeah, like it seems like everything they've had in the last few weeks since like the Stony Brook, Arizona game has really just been in the short game. Haven't really seen them get involved in any sort of, deep routes, which, not a lot of people have been getting involved in deep anything for the passing game this season. So it's not really a slack to the tight ends, but I just don't think that they've really game planned for them to be a huge part of the passing game. And I think that they should consider it, because guys like Terrence Ferguson and Spencer Webb are super athletic, and Mataval as well. So I think they need to, kind of draw them up a little bit. But it's kind of a good problem to have so much talent, able to catch passes from Brown, but it is a problem too.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a cool, or not a cool comparison, but it's an interesting shift, right? When you talked about all the rotation we were seeing at the beginning of the year at offensive line and at wide receiver. But now we're seeing that we kind of needed that because the offensive line was banged up. I don't think we saw Jackson Powers Johnson today either, which was kind of interesting. Did you see him at all?
I don't think I did. Yeah, I think he was in uniform, but I don't think I saw him on the field.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what the deal was there. Because I mean, obviously, if you're losing the game, you want to put the best guys out there. So I don't know, maybe that's just a question for the staff, because he's been playing pretty well, and especially since we had more at working at the guard spot and Bass was at tackle, but shoot, I can't remember what I was gonna say. Okay, yeah, I think this is a good place to have like our last talking point, unless anyone has some more questions they want to throw in the comments. Maybe we'll see with these injuries to the wide receivers. Maybe that would be an opportunity for the tight ends to get more involved. I don't know. There's a direct correlation there, but just wanted to throw that out there. But where does Oregon go from here? You got one more game left in the Pac-12 regular season. Oregon State comes to town for a rivalry matchup. I don't know let's see if I can find that score. If you have that handy, Dylan, for how they're doing.
Arizona State just scored on a touchdown. Looks like it's 17-10, just under 14 minutes left in the fourth quarter.
Okay, so maybe they're going to be making that one a little bit interesting, but you get Arizona State. If I'm Morgan, you just want to, obviously you want to win that game. I don't think you're worried about style points anymore. I don't know if they were, at least on the outside, I don't think, we never heard that they were, trying to get style points. I don't think any team's really going to come out and say that, right? You just want to win. You're not going to apologize for winning if you barely win. The only thing that matters is that you win. So that's what you got to do. You got to get a win here. That's gonna send them to the Pac-12 championship game. If they can take care of business there, they'll probably meet Utah again. And I think it's really just it's gonna show us a lot about this team, how they come out and play against Oregon State. They do play pretty well at home. Obviously they're a lot more comfortable there than on the road, as we've kind of come to see here. But you're playing for a Pac-12 championship and a Rose Bowl. And I mean, obviously this team had playoff aspirations before the season started. We saw just how real those playoff possibilities were. But in a similar sense, with you have to play a full 4 quarters, you gotta take care of business the whole season and win those games on your schedule. There's really, with the way that things fell for them, you only had opportunity to lose one game, and playoff hopes got dashed.
Man, this season feels a lot like the 2019 season. Now that I'm looking back at the schedule and just kind of the ebb and flow of how everything's been going, it feels a lot like that. Just the timing of the Arizona State loss and the hype around Oregon. Oregon was much higher ranked coming into this game than Oregon was going into the Arizona State game, I believe. I think Oregon was probably just outside the top 10 or in the top 10. I don't quite remember. But yeah, I mean, Pac-12 championship in the Rose Bowl is, it's nothing necessarily to sniff at. It's something a lot of programs in the Pac-12 especially would, will shoot for. It's a goal of a lot of teams, but this program has a lot higher expectations and standards, and they have yet to meet those in terms of getting to the college football playoff and competing for a national title. So if they do beat Oregon State, it is a guarantee now that if they go to the Pac-12 championship, Utah will be facing them again, because with the win, Utah clinched the Pac-12 South. So, that is going to be the opponent should Oregon win. And so Oregon State, I mean, that's no, you kind of think of them as a little brother to Oregon over the years, but this Oregon State team, I've watched them quite a bit. Really fun to watch, really dynamic offense. Kind of similar to Utah a little bit. Like, the passing game isn't going to blow you away. They still have some big targets, but the run game is where they get their money. BJ Baylor, Deshaun Fenwick, even Chance Nolan, the quarterback. Those guys can really run it. BJ Baylor, in my opinion, is the best running back in the Pac-12. I feel like him and Travis Dye are kind of 1A, 1B. But Baylor, I've really, really liked what I've seen from him as a pure runner. The guy is phenomenal. So again, this is not a team to sniff at, especially, with everything on the line, with Oregon State being able to kind of, I think it would probably give them the Pac-12 North if Oregon State was to win tonight and then win next week. I think they're in the clear for that. So yeah, they have a lot to play for. It's not just like, oh, we can spoil Oregon's season. They have a lot for themselves as well.
I think what's one thing that's on my mind as we kind of wind down here, and then obviously talking about, Dylan, what's still left to play for, Pac-12 championship in a Rose Bowl. I think Oregon, the state of the program, state of the fan base, and everyone they're not saying a Rose Bowl is a bad thing or a Pac-12 championship is a bad thing, but they've been recruiting at the level, bringing in the talent at the such a high level that that you beat Ohio State. I mean, that's like a playoff win in the beginning of the season when you're missing major players on the road. You see that, and it sets the bar that much higher. So they've been able to, exactly, yeah. Trello is saying that the Rose Bowl is getting old. That I feel like that's a perfect point to what I'm trying to say here. Sorry, it's getting a little late, so I'm having a little bit of issues with my words.
Can I relate that to something?
Yeah.
So as a Green Bay Packers fan, it's like going to the NFC Championship game every year. Like, it's a little further along than Oregon for the Rose Bowl, because it's not like a playoff, not on the brink of a championship, but it's kind of like that. You're just on the brink every year, and then you just come up short late in the year. Like, it's an expectation thing. Oh, Oregon's going to run the Pac-12. They're going to be a top 10 team. They get the win over Ohio State, which not a lot of people expected. I sure didn't expect them to win the way that they did, especially. And then, you have a game like Stanford, where Stanford just seems to have Oregon's number when it comes to spoiling their playoff hopes, BCS hopes, wherever wherever they were. And then you have a game like this where everything just kind of falls apart. So, I think they need to definitely win in a statement fashion against Oregon State in the Pac-12 championship game and in the Rose Bowl, because you still have a lot of recruits that are looking at this program and expecting them to be, to set the standard for themselves. And, the Rose Bowl shouldn't be the ceiling for this program.
Exactly. I feel like that's exactly what I was saying. They've proven that there's those flashes that they're able to go beyond the Rose Bowl, that they should be going beyond the Rose Bowl to those playoff games. And I think just with the way that the season's gone, and I'm sure we'll see it in the playoffs, there is such a huge difference between making it to the playoffs and winning a playoff game and getting to the national championship. And it's no small task. So Ducks drop a pretty tough one to Utah. I mean, I'm pretty surprised that we've gotten this much of a live stream out of such a beatdown. But yeah, I think that'll do it for Dylan and I here. We're going to try to do more of these live streams on a fairly regular basis. It's always fun to interact with you guys and kind of get your questions and kind of help guide the discussion. But if you're watching, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, please. It only takes a couple seconds out of your day, and it's free. Helps us keep doing our thing here, covering the Ducks and bringing you some great content. Thanks to everyone that tuned into this one. And now we got to turn the page before long and get ready for Oregon State coming to town next week. That's all we got for this one, and we'll see you guys in the next one.